Wow. I don't know if I can say anything after all that. I mean, that's amazing. Thank you, Guy. It's just awesome to be here. Someone said, well, this is your second Sunday here. And it's like, really? Because so much has happened. I've talked to so many people in the last week and a half. It felt like I had been here for much longer. I mean, it feels like home. And I want to thank all of you for loving and welcoming myself, my wife, to this loving Ohana. I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for how you've opened your hearts to me, how you've made us feel so welcome. And my wife needed to go back to Wichita to work and finish up some things there. Well, she'll be back in June. And I'm looking forward to that. And we're looking today at the feeding of the 5,000. It's one of 3 miracles that are recorded in all 4 of the Gospels. Now our theme today is everything we need is already here. Let's say that together. Everything we need is already here. All right, now let's breathe into that. And let's really believe that. Okay, let's believe it as we say it. Let's say it again. Everything we need is already here. And throughout the week, if you're tempted to think that there's lack, limitation, not enoughness, that somehow God is broke or God somehow ran out of gas, that God is somehow not able to meet all your needs, affirm that everything we need is already here. Because in unity, we believe, first and foremost, that there is only one presence and one power, active as our lives and as the universe. God the good, omnipotence. And how else could it be? I mean, if God's everywhere fully present, then you can't diminish, dilute, divide, or in any way separate God. God is fully and completely present, and in God is everything that we need. So we have this amazing miracle, which you can see the picture up here, about the feeding of the 5,000. Now, first of all, I want to give a little disclaimer and say that this was written in a very patriarchal age. So they counted the men. It's 5,000 men, but there were also women and children there. So there were 10, 15,000 people or so. It was a big group. And I wanted to share a little bit of this scripture with you. Now, you got quite a bit there. I don't know if you can read all of that, but let me share some of it with you from John chapter 6, verse 5. When Jesus raised his eyes and saw that a large crowd was coming to him, he said to Philip, "Where can we buy enough food for them to eat?" And he said this to test him because he himself knew what he was going to do. Okay? In unity, we believe in what's called metaphysical Bible interpretation. Metaphysical Bible interpretation. Now, metaphysical may sound like an airy-fairy, fuzzy-wuzzy word, but metaphysical really just means greater than or more than the physical. Metaphysical. And so it's like Jesus told us and taught us that we are to judge not or understand not according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. That is, don't just get locked in to the circumstances, right? I mean, if your car runs out of gas, okay, you acknowledge that you've run out of gas. You still acknowledge the circumstances, but you know that the gas tank is not your source. God is your source. And so whatever you need is already there. It's already present. Jesus represents this Christ presence. This Christ presence living in, through, and as each one of us. The Christ is this oneness, the oneness with the divine. Each one of us has this. It's inherent in us. The real you was never born. You might have to ruminate on that. You can ruminate on that through the week. The real you was never born. The real you, the you that you really are, will never die. Because the real you is the divine presence that can never be diluted or divided. So the first principle is there's only one presence, and therefore the second principle of unity teachings is that means each and every one of us are the outpicturing of that presence. Every one of us, no matter how you look. So when you look at yourself in the mirror, you are the divine looking back upon itself, recognizing itself, and saying, oh my, look at this beautiful person staring back at me. I am so fortunate to be me. Is that how you start each morning? I'd encourage you to do that. Do that. Know how magnificent you are, how wonderful you are. Because that's the truth of it. And Philip represents the power we'll be celebrating next month. Now, in unity, we have 12 powers that we talk about, corresponding to 12 different apostles. Well, the one for next week sometimes is confusing to people because Philip represents the power of power. And I remember when I first heard that, the 12 powers, okay, there's a power of power. And I'm like, that's redundant, that's ridiculous. But as I got to studying it and understanding it, what we're talking about here is the power of mastery, the power to manifest, the power to be able to create our lives. And so Jesus said to Philip, representing our power of mastery, because in metaphysical Bible interpretation, we're not just looking at what happened 2,000 years ago or 2,500 years ago. We're looking at what's going on in our consciousness right now. So the Christ of our being says to us, how are you going to meet your needs? And so the power of mastery in us, if it's not fully developed, says, even if we had 200 days' wages, we wouldn't be able to. All of us use the 12 powers. All of us do. But sometimes we use it in ways that we do not intend or we're not conscious of. People use the power of mastery, for example. Sometimes there can be a very, very calm, peaceful situation, but there may be a person who is addicted to chaos. And they use their power of mastery to create chaos. Wherever they go, they're a chaos magnet. And so they're using the power of mastery, but maybe not in the way that reveals the highest and best in them. Maybe not revealing the Christ that they are. Maybe not revealing what they're really here to do, but they're still using that power. You use the power of mastery when you get in a car and drive. But if you just close your eyes and step on the accelerator all the way to the floor, you're still expressing the power of mastery, but the result could be disastrous. It's up to us how we use these 12 powers. And just like a car, these powers don't care how they're used. It's up to us what it is we want to create and manifest in our lives. So Philip represents this power of mastery. And at this point, he's like, 200 days' wages worth of food won't be able to feed everybody. And the Greek word here is denarii. A denarius was a Roman coin. They were under Roman occupation. A denarius was a day's wage. Here you go, 1 denarius. And so he's saying 200 days wouldn't be enough. And then we have Andrew and Peter. Andrew represents the power of this month, strength, the power of perseverance, the power to endure. And Peter represents faith, the power of our belief. Again, we all use these powers all the time. The person who tells me, everyone is against me. Everyone. The whole world is against me. And it's just getting worse and worse. That person is right. And the person who tells me, everyone is wonderful. Everyone is so good to me. And the universe has everything I need. The universe has my back. The universe is conspiring on my behalf. They're right too. Because we have the power to manifest all of that. So Jesus said, according to your faith, be it done unto you. Now, I have some good news and I have some bad news. Which would you like first? I hear different opinions. I heard bad, I heard good. Okay, let me start with the bad news. The bad news. You ready for the bad news? Deep breath. The bad news is you are responsible to create your life. Are you ready for the good news? The good news is you are responsible to create your life. It's how you look at it. Okay, it means, oh, wow, I'm responsible. I can't blame anyone. I can't blame my mom. I can't blame my school teachers. I can't blame my genetics. I can't blame any of this stuff. It's been such a convenient story. It's been such a convenient stall tactic of the ego to say that I cannot do anything because of how my mama treated me. Or to say, because of how my teachers treated me, or how they treated me on the job, or because of the situation I was born into. That's just a story. It's a good story, and I'll listen. But it's a story. And is your story helping to carry you into your highest and best good, or is your story keeping you in misery? It's our choice. So the good news is we can create our life. We can create our life experience however we want to create it. It's up to us. That's the good news of unity. Some people come to unity and it's like, wow, I don't know if I want to go back to that church. They tell me I'm responsible for my own life. It was so convenient to be able to blame others. But other people come to unity and say, wow, I love that church because they give me the tools and the practical principles on which I can change my life. And why be a victim and leave it up to other people? It's ours. It's ours, right? So, Jesus is saying to Philip, what do you want to create? And he's like, I don't have what I need. And so Andrew comes up. Andrew represents the power of strength, the power of endurance, the power of perseverance. And he's like, well, we got this boy, and he has some loaves and fish, but what's that among so many? But at least there was that power of endurance, that power of strength that wasn't giving up. We got a little. And Jesus is like, you got a little? I got a lot. If we hand it into that rich field of faith, then it can become much. And so this little boy brings his 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, and Jesus says, have the people recline. It's all in control. And whatever little bit we bring, or may seem like little, it's really not, but whatever little bit we bring can be multiplied many times over. I shared in the earlier service, I've gone through different phases in my life. And one of those phases, when I was in college, I had a real hard time talking to people in college. You may have a hard time believing it. Many people there had never heard me talk. And so I felt this call of God to be a minister, and I said to my academic advisor, I'm called to be a minister, but I need to learn how to talk. I want to also major in speech. And he said, no, don't do that. Take all the Bible you can, all the theology and philosophy you can. You'll be good. But Spirit was calling me otherwise, and I said, So I also majored in speech. So I would take speech, and I took debate and other things to pull me out, because I knew there was something inside me that wanted to come forth. There was a dream in me that wanted to manifest, and I refused to just sit back and say, well, I'm quiet. And somehow I'm going to minister in the silence. And I'm just going to send the vibes out. Now I do that too. So when our college class went to Padre Island, Texas for a marine biology class, there was a big church there, and they knew we were from a religious college, and they said, any of you students, there was a big group, any of you students want to preach the sermon on Sunday at our church? My hand immediately shot up. And people are staring at me. And they were concerned. They were worried. All week, they were coming up to me wanting to know, do you have something in mind to say? Do you have a message? We've never heard you talk before. They wondered if it was just going to be a long meditation in the silence. The day came, had a magnificent time, and they're like, oh, we've never heard you talk before. You should talk more. Whatever's inside of you, it may seem like a little bit, bring it forth. It's that dream. But there's another interpretation to this scripture that a number of scholars have looked at, including George Lamza and Rocco Errico. They are Aramaic scholars. And in their studies, they consider a second interpretation of what happened here. Now, when I first heard this interpretation, I thought, well, I like the idea of the whole multiplication of loaves and fish, just... And I still believe that and know that we can manifest whatever we need to through our faith. But as time has gone on, I've considered this second interpretation. I don't know if I'd say an even greater miracle, but a miracle that really touches my heart. And here's what they propose happened. This little boy with the loaves and fish brought all that he had. He was open-hearted. And he gave everything he had. And those thousands of people who were sitting there, hiding their food under their robes for themselves and for their little family, and didn't want to share it with others and didn't want others to know what they had, saw the faith of this boy, and their hearts opened and they began to share with one another. It gives me chills to think of that, because I'm thinking it can be an even greater miracle when people's hearts open. That's when real miracles can happen in a spiritual community. The miracle of what is called koinonia. Koinonia is a Greek word. In most of the Greek manuscripts of the Christian scriptures, the New Testament, koinonia is used 19 times. Koinonia is a Greek word, and there's the Greek word. It literally says koinonia, which means communion, joint participation, a gift jointly contributed, a collection. It identifies the idealized state of fellowship and unity that needs to exist within the Christian church, the body of Christ. It's the example given in Scripture of how a Christian spiritual community needs to operate. Really loving. The divine recognizing itself. And I define love this way. Love is the divine recognizing itself in the other and treating the other as such. Love is the divine recognizing itself in the other and treating the other as such. When we see the divine in every person, no matter how they look, sometimes God has a really great disguise. But however they look, however they show up, when we are able to see rightly, as Eric Butterworth said, to see rightly, be it done according to your faith, according to your belief, not according to your sight. As you believe, so you will see. Believing is seeing. Not seeing is believing. Believing is seeing. You see what you believe. And so as we see that divine presence in every person, we recognize the truth of it. So now, why I'm dressed the way I'm dressed. I love India, and I've gone there for a couple of extended pilgrimages in India. Last time was 2 years ago. I traveled by myself. Wasn't with a group, wasn't with a tour guide, none of that. I was by myself. And I was traveling across India, and primarily I was staying in ashrams. Ashrams are spiritual communities. Communities that come together and basically have things in common and are there to support each other. And I would dress in white. And this is at one of the ashrams. It was simple, but this was a nice ashram. A couple of the others that I stayed at were quite primitive. I mean, And I was washing clothes out of a little bucket, a little pail. And anyway, it was a very interesting experience. You'll hear more about that someday. And I was with a number of children. I was with the poorest of the poor children. Some of the ashrams that I went to clothe, feed, shelter, and school the poorest of the poor children for free. And for $150 a year, one child can be fed, clothed, sheltered, schooled for $150. Whole different economy than Hawaii. And just saying. So these are some of the young boys that I was with. And as you can see, this is one of the leaders from the school. There's a difference of color, difference in size. We look different, but there was this connection. And I traveled all sorts of ways. I traveled on bicycle rickshaws. I traveled in those little auto rickshaws. Do you know what I'm talking about? Those little jeepney things. And they can crowd about 8 or 12 people in one of those things, and people are hanging out the sides. I traveled by government bus. It was 110, 115 degrees in the bus, about 95% humidity. They would open the windows to let in a little breeze and a whole lot of dust. It was just, and we're sitting on top of each other in every position. But it was wonderful. I got to know all these wonderful people, and wherever I went, everything I needed was provided. So I took this train ride. It was scheduled to be a 12-hour train ride. 12 hours. And most of the places I went to, I was the only white guy around. And so people were staring at me. And as I walked over here today from my apartment, I realized it's not just in India. I'm walking down the street, and people are staring at me as they drive by, and they're smiling like, isn't he cute? What cult is he part of? So anyway, in this car, we're all sitting, and the train is rocking, this rhythmic motion, and I'm getting my things settled. And do you ever get the feeling you're getting stared at? And I look up, and in this car, we were all facing one another. And they're all just staring at me. Like, I can just hear them thinking, I don't know what it is, but it sure is white. Wow. And so we're rocking back and forth, and I'm starving. I'm famished. And I was counting on there being some food on the train, and the employees on the train informed me, we don't have any food here. I'm like, wow. I have a 12-hour journey, and I'm already famished. So I thought, well, I got my prayer beads. So, I sat in my spot, and I'm sitting there, and I'm praying, and I'm doing my prayer beads, and the more I pray and the deeper I go, I'm still acknowledging my hunger, but it's loosening its hold on me. And after a while, going into deep meditation, I'm thinking, are they still staring at me? And so I open my eyes, and they're all just like this. And I smile and wave. A couple of them give me a little bit of a smile, but they're just staring. So I go back to praying, go deeper and deeper. That feeling of hunger is loosening its attachment. Surely they're not still staring at me. Open my eyes again. They're just sitting there staring at me. This happens several times. And I keep going into deep meditation. And at one point, I feel someone tapping me on the right shoulder. I'm like, ooh, this is different. Someone's not staring. I open my eyes, and there's this Indian woman who says, I have some food. Are you hungry? I would like to share with you. And I was so touched. And yet at the same time, and I don't know if I'd call it arrogance, but, I had gone there to India to help others, and I realized, I'm in a very different position now. I'm in the position to be helped by the Indian people. And I had seen poverty there like you just don't see here. You really don't. And I said, well, thank you. I'm touched by that, but I wouldn't want to take anything from you that you would need. She said, I fixed a lot of food last night. I baked some pastries, and it would be my honor if I could share some food with you. It would really please me if you would take some of my food. And I could feel her heart. I knew she meant it. And I said, okay, thank you. Thank you so much. And she brought over this bag of pastries, and she was so happy. Well, the people who were sitting there on the train, they're like looking back and forth now. The television show has changed. There's another actor. She's talking to it. What's it going to do? And so I received this food, and I began to eat it. And when I began to eat it, you could see the whole car just relax and begin to smile, and they begin to talk to each other. And it's like, hey, he's like one of us. I became part of the Ohana. I became part of that family. Even though I looked different and everything, they knew he's one of us. There is no separation. And they were able, in that time with a guy they don't know from anybody, to experience Koinonia, Aloha. Aloha. We share that ha, that breath. When we rub nose, we are sharing the same breath. What happens to you happens to me. We're all in this together. And they recognized it in a total stranger and extended love and compassion to me. And I'm thinking that's the perfect image of what we are here to do. We are here to love each other. We are here to forgive each other. We are here to experience reconciliation. We are here to experience healing. Everything we need is already here. Everything we need is already here. The Apostle John was the only apostle to make it into old age. The others have been martyred. And the Apostle John, would be taken to a spiritual community, and they'd be, oh, wow, we're so glad John is here. He can share with us from the life and teachings of Jesus. He's been so close to Jesus. Share with us, John. And so John would come to address the spiritual community, and they'd be just waiting to hear what he would have to say. What profound thing will he say? And he would say, little children, I say to you, love one another. And then he'd be done. And then they're thinking, well, maybe he's tired. They bring him the next week, want him to share with them again. They're like, okay, here it comes. Some profound teaching. And he says, little children, I say to you, love one another. And then he'd be done. And it happened week after week. And they said, John, it is such an honor to have you here. Oh, it's an honor, but you were with Jesus a long time. You know a lot of things, and we're looking forward to your teaching. Isn't there something more that you would like to say to us? And John said, if you will do that, it will be enough. If you do that, it will be enough. That's what it means to be spiritual community. That's what it means to be koinonia. Everything we need is here because our heart's open. We are here for one another. We are here to support each other. And this church is never, ever in lack or limitation. Because all of us open up our gifts, our talents, who we really are. We always have everything that we need. I am so grateful to be here, and thank you for being here. Mahalo.